Hi guys, Cliff here. I want to bring you a video that's going to make this whole process of choosing a shoe for your athletic endeavor much simpler and just some really good sound advice that I want to bring to you. I'm Cliff Stegall. I'm a physical therapist of 30 years and I'm a certified strength and conditioning specialist, and I've been poring over research and internet information and looking at all the scientific studies regarding what is the correct method for choosing the right shoe for you. Well, what I've done is I put it in a 3-step plan, and it's culminated from my experience from working with professional athletes and dancers, working with some of the top level therapists and physicians to bring about this information to you. So let's get started and take a look at number one. The most important thing that you need to consider is that a lot of common general foot pain or discomfort occurs because the intrinsic muscles, the small muscles in the bottom of the foot, have become atrophied and the arch begins to drop because of this modern world in which we live in and wearing improper shoes and not stimulating those muscles. If muscles aren't stimulated, things begin to happen. So what I want you to do first and foremost is go to pcsfitness.com/happyfeet. Right there is the site. Take a look at that. I've developed this nice, easy, quick program that you can do that will help you strengthen those feet and probably take care of most of the problems that you might be having respective to discomfort or fatigue in your footwear. Number two, what are we supposed to do with all this information about barefoot minimalist shoes versus traditional running shoes? Because frankly, the research and development that's taking place is phenomenal and the information is conflicting to one another. What are you supposed to do? I got an answer for you. I want you to do both. Elements of both are true. I don't think necessarily you need to do one completely. I think there needs to be a balanced approach. So let's take a look at the foot itself. Like Leonardo da Vinci said, the foot is this masterfully engineered piece of artwork, and indeed it is. There are 26 bones in the foot. There are 33 joints, over 100 muscles and tendons that work intrinsically in this structure to make it flexible so that at mid-strike it can absorb forces as you walk and as you run and attenuate them throughout the system. Then in milliseconds it converts to this rigid lever to give you propulsion and drive you forward. Miraculous. But it's got to be in top fit condition in order to do those kind of properties and provide you the kind of performance you want. So take a look at what's going on with shoe companies, and they've got these great shoes that are coming out. Folks, I want you to know shoe companies aren't evil. They got your best interest in mind, and they're developing shoes that are made specifically for what you want and what activity you're going to do. And that's what's important in picking your next shoe. I want you to go to your boutique, your specialized footwear store for running, for example, and go to that kind of facility knowing in your mind what it is you're going to do. Are you going to be playing tennis? Are you going to be playing golf? Are you going to be running? If you're running, are you doing sprinting, long distance? All these are factors in going to determine what shoe you're going to use. When you look at that and you take a look, oh, am I male, am I female? Because yeah, that matters too. There's difference in foot morphology, which is basically to say the shape of it, of a female foot and a male foot. And these guys that make these shoes and these very high-end shoe companies make these shoes designed specifically for a woman's foot and for a man's foot. So when you do this, try not to change the gender specificity of your shoe, because one is designed for one gender, one's designed for another. Take a look at some of the shoes that I've got, and I want to give you some ideas respective to what I'm talking about. All right, now this is a little embarrassing, but these are some of the shoes that I have in my house, in my car, in my closets, and all over the house. And these are some of my wife's. The reason I'm showing you these is to show you some of the specificity of design. Take a look here. This is a shoe that's designed to diminish impact on very hard surfaces. This is a wonderful shoe that will attenuate shock. Here is a shoe designed more along the lines for long distance. And it has this great rigidity in the mid portion of the foot called the midfoot. The significance of that is a lot of people have hypermobility. They're too mobile in their feet and they need a little bit more control. They're more comfortable with that. Here's a shoe that's designed specifically for trails. It's much more rigid, and take a look at what I'm doing. Every time I pick up a shoe, I'm always manipulating it. The reason is it's going to tell you about the characteristics of the shoe. This one, for example, as I said, is very rigid, and it's got a very little bit of flex right here at the toe joint called the metatarsal heads. It's also got a very stiff shank, and that's to protect you from roots and rocks and things like that. You don't want to go barefoot doing that kind of thing, so you take one of these shoes. Look at this. Here's a minimalist shoe. Let's look at that squish test on it. And oh my goodness, yeah, you can take this thing and put it in your pocket. It is designed to give you a very low heel drop. The heel drop is the ratio of the heel height to the toe height. The lower it is, the more it mimics barefoot walking, the more your foot muscles are going to work than in something that's more rigid, say, like this with a higher heel counter and more midsole stability, okay? This is a wonderful hybrid shoe. They're called cross trainers. You can use them for walking, you can use them for training. They've got great capacity for that. And then this is my wonderful cleats. They should be used obviously for sport, on the field, nothing else. They have a specific place and purpose. Same thing with these guys, river walking shoes, love those. Crocs, they even have a place. I love Crocs because when I go to the gym, I want to protect my feet, there it is again, protection, from all the fungus and all the nasty stuff that's down in that shower, and these little holes drain. And gee, in the morning when it's cold in December and I want to go get the mail, I got a nice fuzzy Croc. Everything has its purpose. That's what I'm trying to show you here. And this is about athletic footwear and its form and function. Okay? I'm not talking about a dress shoe, although I do like a dress shoe that puts athletic characteristics in it like this one. It's got that nice flexibility, it's got shock absorption, it's got a nice low heel drop that allows my foot to work and is comfortable all day when I'm doing business activities. Love that. Now, here is a woman's shoe, and here's what my wife wears. She's an ER nurse, and she needs cushioning on that hard concrete floor, and she loves this kind of shoe. That's a nice hybrid. It's a good cross-training shoe, and it gives her support and cushion at the same time. When she's going on a long run, she needs that nice stiffness, that torsional control, and she loves the gel in the forefoot and the rear foot to take care of shear and impact. But all of these are only as good as the strength you have in your feet. The other thing that's important to understand is you're buying your gender specific shoes because you got to look at your morphology, the function of your whole body. Okay, so let's consider women. They have wider hips. It tends to produce knees that go in and different forces. It's called a Q angle. It's the line of pull of the quadricep muscle or the thigh muscle. And the shoes accommodate for that. They actually make them different in the heel and the motion control segment of the shoe versus what a man has. So all these things are going to be specific for that. Shoot, they even put this in golf designs. This shoe is a more rigid shoe, designed more for striking and swinging. And this is a more athletically designed, flexible shoe that's going to be accommodating for all the walking that you may be doing if you're carrying your bag. So in addition to when you're buying your shoes, thinking of what activity you're doing and the specificity of the activity, and you're looking at your morphology and your gender, I want you to consider the biomechanics of your run. What we've discovered is that a lot of shoes with a very thick heel counter and a lot of shock absorption there can influence a hyperextended gait pattern. And what that means is you're extending your foot out there too far when you're running and actually creating retropulsion forces, increasing shock through the system, and it's demonstrated through the research that there may be contributing to some of the problems in the knee, the hip, the back, and heck, even headaches. I've treated some people's headaches simply by changing their footwear and their gait pattern. So what's probably more efficient and safer for you is use more of a mid-striker type of gait. That's where you're using the natural shock absorbency of the tendons, bones, and the ligaments. And by the way, did you think about the foot? It's what Leonardo said, 26 bones in the foot, You have 33 joints, over 100 muscles and tendons that have this ability to make the foot become this nice, moldable, flexible member at mid-stance, and then in milliseconds turn into a rigid lever that creates propulsion, sending you forward. But that works best with the forefoot striker or mid-foot striker versus a heel striker type technique. So I want you to go to your healthcare professional that really knows what they're talking about when it comes to running gait pattern and get your gait pattern down so that you can change your mechanics. This is going to be very important in reducing discomfort. So keep going back to the different approaches, looking at the minimalist theory and looking at the traditional shoe manufacturer's approach. There's merit to both. Let's discuss the problems with each, shall we? So let's take a look at the barefoot runner. When they came up with this idea of understanding when you're born you don't have shoes on your feet, this is very true. And as a child, you probably did a lot of barefoot running, didn't have any problems with it, and shoes can lead to atrophy. These are all scientific principles. However, our ancestors didn't have to worry about running around with possibly stepping on an infected needle, rusted shrapnel. In fact, their whole life was different in things that I don't necessarily want to employ. I like using the bathroom indoors, for example, and I would rather sleep on a nice, ergonomically designed mattress instead of the ground. So you can get a little carried away with the barefoot principles, but they have their merit. I'm barefoot right now, and when I exercise in my gym, I do a lot of it barefoot. I do some gait training and running barefoot, but I also know at my age and because of my morphology and the changes that have adaptively occurred, if I just go strictly with barefoot running, I'm going to run into problems, and I have before. So there's probably a good amount of wisdom in doing a little bit of both and finding footwear that is not overcompensating. How are you going to know that? Well, it's the third principle. Let's talk about that. There are three types, basic types. Okay, let me clarify. Three basic types of foot shape. Number one is looking at the neutral foot or neutral pronator. When I talk about pronating, let's imagine this is your foot. Here's your toes, here's your heel. It's when the arch is normal. And you have the ability to put force here at the great toe, the big toe, the fifth digit, the metatarsal heads, that's right behind the toe, and the heel. That distributes force appropriately, and with a strong, sound, integritous small muscle group or intrinsic group, the foot functions just like I talked about when Da Vinci was talking about it, as this masterpiece of engineering. However, some people have what we call a overpronated foot, and that's when you start to get some roll in. Well, folks, you've got this leg that attaches to it. It has to follow. It begins to internally rotate, which can affect things further up the chain. However, there's a lot of high-level Olympic sprinters that are flat-footed, and they're internally rotated, and they're fastest people in the world, and they have no problems. So let's be careful with that. Let's take a look at your severe overpronator. That's someone who's pathologic, who's running into pain, who's completely come over, and they've run into all kinds of issues further up the chain. They need help. They need the appropriate footwear. They need medical attention. And I suggest they do that before they go and try any of these exercises or go into different foot styles that we've talked about, or shoe styles. Then we've got your rare incidence, which is your underpronator, which is when the foot starts to actually come up. You got a very high arch, and now you're on the outside of the heel. That's a supinator, and that sometimes happens. And they're going to have a shoe that accommodates those forces, but are going to be different than your neutral person. How do you know which one you are? Well, my recommendation, first of all, go to your foot specialist, your physical therapist that knows feet, certified in their treatment, your podiatrist, your orthopedic specialist that knows these things. If you don't have that capacity, get a big piece of parchment paper or just a paper sack that you've opened up. It's called the wet foot test. You simply step in a pan of water and then walk across that paper. And as you do, you're going to look at the shape. You're going to see these three foot shapes up here on that paper. Your foot will either be completely flat and you'll see all the surface of your tissue, or it'll come up to a neutral, or it may come up to a supinated position. But it gives you an idea when you go to your foot specialist store and you're starting to pick out shoes, you got an idea of what you're looking for. An anti-pronation shoe, a neutral shoe that's more cushioning, or something that gives you more motion control. All these are factors that are going to make you a more educated consumer. So I think the next thing that we need to do is actually go to a fitness store and let me show you how these things are done. So here we are at a boutique running shoe store. So what does that mean? It means that it is catering to a specific sophisticated buyer. That's what I want you to become, is sophisticated. I don't want you to be like the great unwashed masses who are slaves to fashion. You're going to be understanding exactly which category you fall into, and you're buying shoes for performance, protection, and function. It makes you sophisticated. So let's take a look at the first categories you're going to choose. First of all, you want to take a look at this and say, am I male or female? And you want to buy a shoe specific for your gender. Number two, consider your body mass. I'm a small guy. I'm light compared to Shaq O'Neal. He's going to buy a different kind of running shoe than I would to accommodate his mass. So consider that. Then what I've done is I've broken it down into 5 categories. Now, I know that there are many more categories of shoes, but for the purpose of this video, and to clear up the confusion, and to give you a concise, reliable method for understanding what it is you want to find in your shoe, here's what we're going to do. We're going to break it down according to if you're looking for a running shoe, a trail running shoe, a gym shoe, a sports-specific shoe, and then finally, yes, that all-important casual shoe. Okay, so now what happens when you come to a place like this, you're going to see all these different types of shoes, and it can be confusing. But you are a sophisticated buyer. So let's just say that I'm a woman, and I'm a light girl, and I'm going to be running a 5K. Oh yeah, I also know which category I'm going to fall into specific to my foot type. Am I a neutral foot? Am I a overpronator, a severe overpronator, or a supinator, or underpronator? So what happens is when I come here to a place like this, those guys that work here are trained specifically to put you in a shoe that fits your category. They're going to give you multiple types of shoes. Wear at least 5. Let's take, for example, that I'm a overpronating female and I'm going to run a 5K. What I'm going to look for is a shoe as they come down becomes more supportive, more motion control like this one. And I want you to manipulate the shoe. What does that midfoot torsion feel like? Well, this one's rigid because of this cross member in here. Great design for someone who wants less motion. It also has a triple density midsole. Now what this does is it attenuates shock more, and it controls overpronation if you happen to have that at the mid stance in your gait cycle. That's when your foot comes in contact with the ground. It's normal to pronate, we've discussed that, but if you pronate too much and it's causing you pain, this might be helpful for you. Now, if you're just looking for something that's high mileage and you need a lighter shoe, then you're going to come up and get something that's got cushioning. This is significantly lighter. It's got less motion control in it. It's more flexible. And so what happens is, if you have a strong integrative foot, this is a good shoe if you are a neutral runner, not someone who has too much motion in your normal gait process. Now, these are running shoes for the street. They're designed to protect you. They're designed to increase your performance and feel good at the end of a run. What if you're running on something like a trail? Well, we come over here and take a look at these. We're going to compare this shoe to the one we were just looking at. This shoe has what we call a higher heel drop. That's the ratio of the heel height to the toe height. This is a lower heel drop. And also, it's much more rigid. And the sole of it's designed to take rocks and stones. And your upper, this portion here, is designed to keep your foot more planted, which is significant when you're trail running. So when you are coming in here to these places, I want you to come and make sure, ask them to fit you, because your foot changes. Every year you need to be measured, and you'll get a gender-specific Braddock device, which is going to measure your length and your width, and it's going to tell you if one foot happens to be a little longer than the other one, which is important. Now, When you get this information, don't forget to consider the volume of your foot too. What does that mean? Let's take a look. Come over here and let's look at one of these shoes. Now, certain shoes have a higher degree of volume compared to a lower volume shoe. Now, what that means is when you're asking them to fit you, they're going to consider your length, your width, and your volume, and that's going to help you pick those shoes. Now, once you've got all this down, what next? Well, you put the shoe on, you narrow it down to 5, you wear the shoe and you jump in it. You run in it, you walk in it for a long period of time, and do this at the end of the day, and do it when you've got the socks that you're going to wear for that particular activity, because all those factors will determine how this shoe feels when you go out there and pound the pavement or hit the trails. So this is very significant for you to consider when you come here. Do all those things first, and that way you're going to get the best result and you're going to be happy. Now, when I'm asking you to feel for comfort, I want you to take a look at, let's find something here specific to this shoe. When I put my foot in here, does it bind here at the 5th toe? Does it bind here at the 1st toe? You know that knuckle where a lot of people get bunions? If you have a very small toe box, this is a toe box at this point, and it's narrow, it can cause problems because now you're increasing forces with running. You want to have a lot of room here. What is a lot of room? Well, it needs to be your thumb. Don't use a salesman thumb, use your thumb, because this is your foot and you have that specific room that's going to be needed in a running shoe because you're running linearly, so your foot is going to swell and it's going to move some as you run in a straight line. You want that accommodation in a running shoe. When you go to a sport-specific shoe, it's a totally different situation. So let's go to that now. So now on to the sport-specific shoe. And I love the differences in shoes. They're really quite amazing. This is a soccer shoe or a football shoe. And the differences in a running shoe and this shoe are astounding. Let's begin with the lower or the sole of it. You can tell right away that it's got a very low heel drop. And remember, the heel drop is the ratio difference of height from the heel and the forefoot. So the significance of that is what? This shoe is designed to create in you the favorance of a midfoot or forefoot striking pattern. That's going to create less shock within the system and cause your muscles, ligaments, and bones to absorb the forces throughout the system, okay? Versus what's happening in a running shoe, which has got that higher heel drop ratio, the heel to the forefoot, and a lot of times that encourages more of a heel striker, which is preferred by some people. So we go back to the differences in the shoe and look at the lacing system difference. This lacing system is much more elaborate, it is much more secure, and it goes throughout the full length of the forefoot. And what that does, it creates a more secure upper feeling. The upper is this part of the shoe that's separate from the sole, and it's more rigid than a running shoe. It breathes less and is trying to create stability, because what's happening mechanically when you play a game of football or soccer is you got all these lateral and medial forces to create shear, and you don't want your foot moving a lot because that's going to create blisters. In a running shoe, not so much. You want the ability of the foot to move a little bit because you're running in a straight path. You don't need all that upper stability. In fact, these are designed to breathe, to let your foot move a little bit through the natural course of the running gait cycle. It's designed for that. Isn't that splendid? All right, now let's look at other examples of sport-specific shoes to drive home these points that I'm trying to get through to you. Golf. When you're playing golf, you're swinging a club at high speeds and you're carrying a bag and walking. So what they do is, golf companies want to make you happy. They're going to give to that person who swings the club at a high velocity stability in the swing, and to create ground reaction forces that go through the body to create that whipping action and the best performance off the tee. Well, that's what this shoe does. It's very rigid. It has a rigid upper and a rigid lower. It's got a low heel counter. Again, we're trying to get those ground reaction forces and create more of a barefoot environment. This is going to do that very well. But what is it lacking? They got to walk 9 miles sometimes when they play 18 holes with a bag on them and in the heat, and their dogs are going to be killing them. So what do? Here we go, the nice hybrid. This has aspects of an athletic shoe, a breathable upper, it's more flexible, but it has stability, great grip, so that it gives you stability in the swing. And then when you put the bag on and you decide to go walk this great distance, now you have cushioning, you got breathability, you're much happier at the end of 18 rounds. So this is a good answer to that problem. Now, here's an exciting new field of shoe design. The minimalist shoe, actually people are getting away from that. They like the idea of a fitness shoe or a gym shoe. So fine, let's humor them. Here is our shoe that is designed to look at its thinking in its particular formation. It's got a heel counter that's low. Again, trying to get that foot as close as we can to the ground so that you can use the ground reaction forces to create more power. That's what these guys want. Also, they need some cushioning because they're going to be doing plyometrics, like when you're doing cross-training drills, jumping up on those boxes, going up and down ropes. We even have wear meters for going up and down ropes and not tearing up your shoe. And it's got the ability to have some motion in it so you're comfortable as you heat up and you're doing your work. And I want you to take a look at this last. The last is the shape of the shoe. This is a curved last. This shoe has a semi-curved last. And if you look at a dress shoe, it has a straight last. Each one of those shapes are designed to either create stability or create cushioning and a little bit more of a return to the barefoot theory. So it's trying to create the shape of your own foot so that it performs in a certain way. You don't want that in a dress shoe necessarily, however, I do. I wear dress shoes that have an athletic design in them and they're just wonderful, but that's me. So going on to my next most interesting category of shoe is the casual shoe. What do you do when you're not playing sports, when you're not working out, which is the majority of your time? You want to be comfortable. So instead of kind of doing what we did in the 70s, which is to wear the Sperry Topsider, which was a leather shoe with a rubber bottom. Actually, sometimes they were plastic. And so there's no shock attenuation. It goes directly up into your system and they have to absorb the force. In comes the wonderful answer, which is your casual shoe, which is your, you could actually use these for gym performance too, for working out. But for me, I love this when I'm treating patients. It gives the foot some cushioning when working on a hard surface like concrete all day. You're working 10 hours a day. Your dogs get tired. You need some support. You need a shoe that has a removable sock liner. This creates the ability to, well, number one is trying to create cushioning, but they're easier to clean. It also gives flexibility to make your shoe more customizable if you want to put your own insert that's more in line with what you're trying to achieve. Motion control, cushioning, stability, whatever. This is another example of a shoe that I'll wear when I want to have a little bit more cushioning. This is a little bit thicker than the other one, and I like the characteristics of this because it gives a little bit more motion control.